Shane Dawson, a very apologetic narcissist. This is an analysis with regard to whether Shane Dawson presents as a narcissist. If you enjoy his content and like him as a personality and person, then that is entirely a matter for you. If you disapprove of who he is and his behaviour, again, that is a matter for you. It is important in listening to this analysis that it is understood that this is about the question of narcissism. A detailed examination of key aspects of his behaviour over a period of time will be examined and, where relevant, potential, and I emphasise potential, indicators of narcissism will be flagged. Rather than keep saying potential each and every time, I will merely flag the relevant indicator of the trait or dynamic and mention it. This will enable you, as part of your understanding, to link the behaviour or information to the relevant aspect of narcissism as a profile is created before a determination, one way or the other, is then arrived at. It's important to keep in mind that many narcissists do good things. For example, there are narcissists who create great art, fantastic pop music, create jobs, are interesting lecturers, competitive sports people. Many narcissists not only attain for themselves, but also create jobs, lead countries, create products, innovate, create jobs, generate wealth, and all of those aspects are viewed as good. And therefore, it is not such a straightforward question to ask, is a narcissist a bad person? Because it is multifaceted with regard to the nature of narcissism in terms of they can be good towards some people, bad towards others, create a lot of good whilst behaving in an unpleasant manner towards other individuals. Keep in mind that just because an individual does good, it doesn't mean that they're not a narcissist. Just because somebody donates to charity, is often seen smiling and laughing and being friendly towards people, helps old ladies across the road, doesn't mean that they can't be a narcissist. Conversely, just because an individual engages in occasional poor, misguided or bad behaviour, which is similar to that of engaged in by a narcissist, doesn't automatically make that person a narcissist. A pattern of repeated and habitual indicators is what needs to be identified. So, who is Shane Dawson? He has been described as the king of YouTube. He was born Shane Lee Yor and was known professionally as Shane Dawson, and is an American YouTuber, actor, writer, director, and musician. He became one of the first people to rise to fame on the video sharing platform YouTube. In 2008, aged 19, Dawson began making videos on YouTube and garnered over 500 million views by 2010. Quite the achievement. Most of his early work consisted of sketch comedy videos where he would play original characters, impersonate celebrities, and make light of popular culture. Some of these impressions later drew criticism for their offensive content, including racial stereotypes. During this time, Dawson also had a short-lived music career, releasing 6 original songs such as Super Love and numerous parodies of popular music videos. In 2013, he launched his podcast, Shane and Friends, which ran for 4 years and produced 140 episodes. The following year, he released his first and only feature film, Not Cool, and appeared on an accompanying 10-episode docuseries, The Chair. He has also appeared in the films Smiley and Internet Famous. In 2015, Dawson began his show on YouTube about conspiracy theories, which includes his 2019 web series Conspiracy Series with Shane Dawson. In late 2017, he released his first docuseries on YouTube in which he reconciled with his absent father. From 2019 to 2020, Dawson created and appeared in the beautiful world of Jeffree Star, a docu-series that follows the life of Jeffree Star, which garnered over 130 million views. His most viewed docu-series are about Jake Paul, Jeffree Star, and Tarnacon. As of 2018, Dawson has released 2 New York Times best-selling books, I Hate My Selfie, 2015, and It Gets Worse, 2016, and his 3 YouTube channels have accumulated over 4.5 billion views. Since 2017, he maintains one active channel, Shane, with 21 million subscribers and over 4 billion views. However, as of June 30th, 2020, YouTube indefinitely suspended monetization on all 3 of Dawson's channels following a public backlash over his past controversial comments. According to his Wikipedia page, he was raised in a very difficult household. He was allegedly beaten by his alcoholic, abusive father, who later left his mother to raise the young comedian on her own. Dawson was also bullied at school for being overweight, as well as being poor. One of his characters is a parody of his mother, who, according to the Shane Dawson wiki, gets drunk regularly and calls him an offensive name. These early beginnings exhibit what is known as a lack of control environment. It also suggests, given the behaviour of his father, that his father may well be a narcissist. As a consequence of this, what we see is that there is the potential for the genetic predisposition towards narcissism to exist, and combined with a lack of control environment, namely being raised by a single parent, being beaten, being bullied. Now, this does not mean that somebody who is in such circumstances will automatically become a narcissist, but the key components which can cause narcissism are indeed present. On March 10th, 2008, Dawson made his YouTube channel called Shane Dawson TV. The earliest video that remains on the channel, Kermit the Frog and Me, was uploaded about 4 months later. When he first began making videos, he worked Jenny Craig along with his mother and brother, but was fired in August 2008 after he uploaded a video of himself pole dancing in the building he worked in. His mother, brother, and about 6 other co-workers who appeared in the video were also fired after the company saw the video. Sense of entitlement to create the video whilst working, lack of accountability to obligations concerning the job. When he commenced his work on YouTube, his favourite form of subject matter included pop music and pop culture, which he takes on a crusade of offensiveness. He has a series of drug-addled, often drunk, cultural stereotype characters that he deploys in video after video for laughs. He does not appear to have anything novel to provide, and therefore relies on creating un-PC content to shock. Such an approach in itself, of course, the shock jock method is not especially novel, and evidently resonated with many people on YouTube given the level of success that he's enjoyed to date. However, adopting material of this nature does denote a sense of entitlement to comment in such a manner, arrogance, and a lack of emotional empathy. Online, Bustle commented about the examination of his early material shows. They wrote, "He has a ghetto girl character named Shanae, a caricatured geek named Ned the Nerd, a gangster named S. Deasy, an inappropriate aunt named Aunt Hilda, and his mother. There's also characters such as Barb the lesbian, and a woman who speaks caricatured Chola accent named Fruit Loop. Characters like Fruit Loop, Shanae, and S. Deasy rely on lazy cultural stereotypes of women of colour. Aunt Hilda is the main character in a parody of Katy Perry's The One That Got Away called The One That Turned You Gay. Creating material of this nature evidences a sense of entitlement, a lack of accountability, a lack of emotional empathy. In a video entitled How to Get Pregnant, his character Shanae drugs her co-star with too much MDMA, places an ad on Craigslist with the subject line, "Fuck me till I bleed," and offers her up to a man that asks, "Can I kill her?" Bustle declared that this isn't utilising humour to disempower disturbing imagery. This asinine display normalises imagery of brutal sexual abuse and date rape. This demonstrates a sense of entitlement, belittlement, poor boundary recognition, and a lack of emotional empathy. The Washington Post reported on the 30th of September 2014 that Dawson came under fire in 2012 after what was described as an uncomfortable VidCon segment in which he invited teenage girls on stage and encouraged them to engage in what he called ghetto pranks, which included jokes about chicken and booty dances. This evidences a sense of entitlement, a lack of emotional empathy, triangulation, manipulative behaviour. That incident at VidCon, reported on the 1st of July 2012 in the YouTube Gazette, was one where Dawson apparently utilised cultural stereotypes typically associated with lower-class black people in order to generate laughs. He is said to have gone on to poke fun at child abuse. Criticism was levelled not only at the content of his set, but the people that it was directed towards. Many felt that it was inappropriate for the younger audience that is present at VidCon. A quote read, he, Dawson, had young girls go on stage and impersonate black women using the word chicken and ghetto multiple times, and made his usual paedophilia jokes. Extremely distasteful, worse than usual, and not appropriate for the audience there. In response, many people made the point that it simply seemed that he had scaled up what he does in his videos anyway, and that he seemed confused as to why others found it shocking. This behaviour exhibits a sense of entitlement, a lack of awareness, arrogance, a lack of empathy, poor boundary recognition, and an absence of accountability for the behaviour engaged in. In 2014, Dawson was a well-known YouTuber, and the internet and news were finally starting to recognise YouTube celebrities. Dawson, due to his popularity and his desire to work in the actual film and TV industry, was selected for a documentary series known as The Chair. The series was a filmmaking competition, which Dawson won. There was some controversy that he not only used his YouTube platform to garner votes, but that his movie was seen as offensive, and that he was toxic on set whilst working. Reality Blurred reported on the 2nd of November 2014 that in the penultimate episode of The Chair, Zachary Quinto delivered a brutal, withering takedown of Shane Dawson's movie, Not Cool. After screening Anna Martinucci's film Holidaysburg, the film and TV producer spoke, and Quinto said, "When we watched Shane's movie yesterday, I was depressed for a couple of hours at least. I found it deeply offensive. I'm angry, actually. I'm angry. The fact that $850,000 got put into making something that was so egregiously offensive, and not only the material, but actually the fact that $850,000 was put into making that, it made me angry. And it's not something in any version, or by any stretch of my imagination, that I can ever put my name on or be associated with. The amount of time that I spent watching Shane's film, I will never get back in my life, and I am resentful of that. This kid had $850,000, and all he managed to do was make smut. Tasteless." Now, of course, this is Mr. Quinto's opinion on the outcome, and one he's entitled to make. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's correct, because it's a subjective opinion. However, if his view is an accurate one, then this generates the possibility of the use of $850,000 in an unpleasant manner to create smut, a sense of entitlement, the creation of offensive material, a sense of entitlement, and a lack of emotional empathy for those who have to view it. There was a suggestion that Dawson's film won because he was able to take advantage of his then 13 million YouTube subscribers versus his opponent Martinucci, who apparently only had a couple of thousand YouTube subscribers. Of course, Dawson can't help the fact that he had more fans than the other filmmaker, and if anything, the creators of the show, The Chair, ought to have taken that into account, and therefore to accuse him of taking advantage of the number of his subscribers is an unfair observation. Yahoo Entertainment reported that Quinto's criticism of Dawson's movie was met with the response of Dawson that Quinto just didn't get it. Such a response is haughty, exhibits a sense of entitlement, is dismissive, and evidences a response to the threat to control. Quinto commented that Dawson adopted a very lazy attitude towards the criticism, dismissiveness, response to threat to control. Quinto described the film as not a good movie, and on top of it not being a good movie, it was offensive. Dawson defended his film by saying that, I like the movie. The producers that I trust like the movie. The test audience liked the movie. I know I deserve to make a movie because I've been working my fucking ass off these last 8 years on YouTube. Dawson won the competition, winning the $250,000 to work on another film project. His response shows the assertion of control by dismissiveness, sense of entitlement, and to nullify the threat to control made by the comments. By autumn 2014, Dawson's earlier antics and videos begin to catch up with him once again. On the 26th of September 2014, Bustle reported that Dawson had issued an 11-minute apology video. In this video, Dawson references the public backlash to a few videos in which he painted his face black to play characters like Wendy Williams and Chris Brown. He said that he employed blackface to keep the integrity of his characters. Dawson claims to have been ignorant of the history of blackface and minstrelsy before he made these parodies. Dawson says repeatedly that his fans understand he's not sincerely racist, but that his actions were ignorant, and that's why he's apologising to the offended party. The message is essentially, everyone knows I'm not racist, but I'm sorry you found this offensive. Such a comment is about the assertion of control, facade management, and dismissiveness. There is also blame shifting, essentially saying, I'm sorry you found this offensive, rather than I'm sorry to have done this and caused offence. Subtle, but important to note. The use of blackface shows a sense of entitlement and the absence of emotional empathy. There was no consideration of how that would impact on people, and, importantly, it was done on more than one occasion. It was only when faced with a public backlash, the threat to control, that Dawson issued an apology, an attempt to nullify the threat to control and facade management. The apology video itself is first of all filmed from within a bathroom, which demonstrates an innate lack of sincerity for the nature of the video. And Dawson actually spends the first 2 minutes of the video prefacing, talking about how he is not doing it for money, that it's not scripted, that his friends told him not to do the video, and being distracted by a broken toilet seat. Such behaviour undermines the supposed seriousness of the apology. Evidently, the apology means so much to him that he messed around for 2 minutes before starting the apology. Except it wasn't. He continued with other matters. If the apology was genuine, he would have spent time beforehand thinking about what he wanted to say, and to execute the apology more or less straight away, rather than the 11-minute ramble that followed. After the prefacing, etc., the next minute is then spent explaining that he isn't racist, rather than actually embarking on the apology. He fails to accept accountability for his behaviour by explaining he didn't know what blackface was until a month ago. Whether that is to be believed or not, it ultimately, whether he may not know the origins of blackface, the fact remains his inability to recognise that blacking up would be seen as wrong. It demonstrates an arrogance and a lack of emotional empathy. And moreover, it was done more than once. The supposed apology video is largely talking about himself, maintaining that he isn't a racist, that he fucking cares about his fans, that the end of the video will be when the toilet collapses. His 11-minute diatribe reads as a thinly veiled attempt to look like the good guy, and he doesn't actually own up to what made his video racist in the first place. This supposed apology demonstrates a lack of accountability, a sense of entitlement, facade management, and the assertion of control. In 2015, Dawson came out as bisexual in a video posted on Shane Dawson TV. This announcement also confirmed his separation with his now ex-girlfriend Lisa Schwartz. Bisexuality is relatively common with narcissists because it evidences sexual fluidity, given the absence of a true self. This isn't to say at all that somebody who's bisexual must automatically be a narcissist. Not at all. But rather, bisexuality is evidence in confirmed narcissists because of this sexual fluidity and the absence of a true self. Moreover, the fact that he needed to make such an announcement about his sexuality evidences grandiosity. This is a private matter. Why does everybody have to be given a broadcast about his sexual preferences? The reason being that he needs to do this as part of his grandiosity and the assertion of control. In 2018, Dawson was the subject of a controversy regarding comments he had made about paedophilia on a 2014 episode of his podcast, Shane and Friends, in which he published an apology video likening his comedic style at the time to that of shock jocks. The same comments were also subject of a March 2019 controversy, coupled with controversy regarding comments he had made on a 2015 episode of the same podcast about engaging in sexual activity with his cat. The jokes about these subject matters demonstrates a sense of entitlement and a lack of emotional empathy. The repeated issuing of apologies, where in the past he has spoken of using the apology as a learning experience, demonstrates that he doesn't actually learn from what he has done before. This is typical of the narcissistic behaviour of compartmentalization. The majority of narcissists need to assert control in the moment. Some will also assert control with regard to the future. However, many assert control in the moment. And what that means is that the narcissist will in effect say or do anything in that moment so that control is obtained. And then, once control has been obtained, they will continue to behave in whatever way that they deem appropriate, driven by their unconscious narcissism and their sense of entitlement, lack of accountability, lack of emotional empathy, etc. So this is where you will find an individual who will do something in the moment which is offensive, because that asserts control. When somebody calls them out on that behaviour, criticises them for it, that threatens their control, and therefore their narcissism selects the issuing of the apology. Not all narcissists will apologise, but some will do so. And the apology is done not because there is any genuine contrition, not because the person actually feels sorry, although the unaware narcissist believes they feel sorry, but it's done to assert control, to nullify the criticism which is a threat to the narcissist's control. Once the apology has been issued, then the narcissist goes and does the behaviour again at a future date. Somebody with emotional empathy wouldn't keep engaging in a pattern of behaviour. People with emotional empathy do make mistakes when their emotional empathy is eroded as a consequence of an external stressor. For instance, somebody is absolutely exhausted and they snap at somebody, but they apologise and they don't repeat the behaviour. With a narcissist, what you will notice is that there is a repeated and sustained pattern of poor behaviour, apology for poor behaviour, another apology for the poor behaviour again, another apology for the poor behaviour. And this is the compartmentalization, because that particular type of narcissism doesn't link the behaviours together. All it cares about is control. So the narcissist tells an offensive joke to make people laugh, thus gaining control over them. Then when somebody else points out, you shouldn't have done that, your jokes are offensive, that threatens the narcissist's control. And in some circumstances, in order to nullify that threat, the narcissist will then respond by saying, I'm sorry, only to then issue an offensive joke at another occasion to assert control in that moment. The narcissism doesn't look over a course of time. It operates in a compartmentalized, in-the-moment manner. And Dawson's repeated behaviour of engaging in offensive video making, offensive behaviours, and then issuing apologies only to then go and do it again evidences this compartmentalization. This demonstrates a pattern of a sense of entitlement, the offensive behaviour in the first place, a manipulative response, issuing the supposed apology, false contrition, facade management, pity play, feel sorry for me, I'm not a bad person really, and all of these people are hating on me unnecessarily, and triangulation. In 2017, the focus of Dawson's channel shifted to include a wider variety of video genres, such as extended vlogs, conspiracy theory videos, and documentary-style series, where he collaborates with other YouTubers like fiancé Ryland Adams, Garrett Watts, Morgan Adams, Tanya Mongeau, James Charles, Drew Monson, Andrew Svisky, Trisha Paytas, and Bunny Mayer. It is worth making note that some of the material about the conspiracy theories had been criticised for spreading misinformation, sense of entitlement, lack of accountability, and it is actually quite common for narcissists to have an interest in conspiracy theories and to also generate them themselves. That is a matter for a separate video, which I'll be addressing in due course, but it's worth mentioning in the context of this analysis. Dawson's past controversies resurfaced in June 2020. In response, he posted a 20-minute video on 26th of June 2020 titled Taking Accountability, in which he addressed renewed criticism for his use of blackface, certain words, and other offensive comments he made since launching his YouTube channel. This is the assertion of control and facade management. Although he had apologised publicly before, Dawson claimed that he'd only recently realised how those apologies suck, stating, "I don't know who that person is anymore," and further remarking how he should have been punished for things, and to finally just own up to all of this and be accountable is worth losing everything to me. False contrition, pity play, facade management, lack of accountability. Dawson also apologised to James Charles, whom he had described as egocentric and power-hungry just a week before. False contrition, hypocrisy, projection. Dawson concluded his apology video by vowing to better his actions, but he said he understands if people do not want to accept his apology or no longer support him. Sounds familiar? Yet another apology video. And exhibits a failure to change, promised change, compartmentalization, and pity play. He also claimed that he dealt with the pain from his childhood by making inappropriate jokes. Well, many people have Many people have very painful and difficult childhoods and don't engage in the telling of inappropriate jokes. He'd said, "It is something I did for shock value, or because I thought it was funny. It's all gross, and I promise that this is not real. That is not me." Blame shifting, pity play, facade management. Hours after his apology was posted, musician Jaden Smith accused Dawson of sexualizing his sister Willow Smith, expressing how he was disgusted after an old video resurfaced of Dawson pretending to touch himself in a sexual manner while looking at a poster of a then 11-year-old Willow Smith. Jaden and Willow's mother, Jada Smith, also responded tweeting, "To Shane Dawson, I'm done with the excuses." Such a behaviour of touching himself in a sexual manner while looking at a poster of an 11-year-old girl exhibits a complete absence of emotional empathy, a lack of awareness, poor boundary recognition, arrogance, and a sense of entitlement, and manipulation by way of triangulation. Most recently, something that has been labelled as Karmageddon has arisen. Insider provides a detailed commentary upon this phenomenon, which is worth repeating here, and then, as I go through it, providing observation on this piece with regard to the analysis of potential narcissism in Dawson. The Insider article begins this way. The problem with putting heroes upon a pedestal is that they have a long way to fall, and someone who has fallen and crashed hard this week is Shane Dawson. Over the last few years, Dawson earned his crown as the king of YouTube, with documentary series-length videos that arguably changed how content was made on the platform. Dawson's success has grown and grown with his mega-popular conspiracy theory videos and his access to controversial stars like Jeffree Star and Jake Paul, and elusive ones like Eugenia Cooney. But while he's worked hard on this likeable image, plenty of people never forgot Dawson's past, compilation videos of blackface, distasteful jokes, and other problematic behaviour would sporadically reappear and threaten to take down this carefully crafted identity. This suggests that there is facade management and the assertion of control. Now, in the eye of Karmageddon's storm, Dawson may finally have passed the point of no return. How Karmageddon began. Dawson seemed to like the match that sparked his own cancelling when he posted a lengthy statement about the YouTube beauty community less than 2 weeks ago, slamming dramatic gurus, projection, assertion of control, insult, and saying James Charles needed to be served a slice of humble pie when he lost 3 million subscribers last year. Insult, belittlement, triangulation, assertion of control. It didn't go down well. People within the community started accusing Dawson of using the beauty world as a cash grab, developing his conspiracy palette with Star, making his millions, then swiftly bolting and trashing it from the outside. Sense of entitlement, acquisition of residual benefit of fame and money, triangulation, hypocrisy. This in turn seemed to lead to more angry commentators dredging up Dawson's past of inappropriate and offensive content, such as making jokes about sexualizing children and animals, dressing in blackface and using racial slurs. Over the next few days, the situation escalated to Dawson being called out by Hollywood royalty and being the subject of an explosive takedown video by Tati Westbrook, where she claimed he and Star gaslit and manipulated her into posting the video that caused Charles' demise. If her assertion is accurate, this shows manipulative behaviour, gaslighting as accused, lack of emotional empathy, poor boundary recognition. The video that was published was called By Sister in May 2019 and was done by means of a publicity for the upcoming collaboration. This period of exposing Dawson and Star has been called Karmageddon, a reference to the beauty community's history of meltdowns and creators finally facing their comeuppance. All the drama has resulted in Dawson losing over 1 million subscribers in the last 2 weeks, and his books and makeup being removed from the online stores of Morph and Target. This shows the collateral consequence of manipulative behaviour, where with certain narcissists, because of the need to assert control in the moment, they effectively score own goals, sabotage themselves, burn bridges, because the narcissism isn't thinking about what comes next, all it wants to do is focus control in the moment. And therefore, by engaging in a manipulative instance, control is obtained, but there is a downside collateral consequence. Not, though, of course, that the narcissist would accept responsibility for that, because the narcissism will not allow the narcissist to do it. YouTuber Sharita Gaskin from Sharita Explains It All told Insider she always knew Dawson would eventually crash and burn, but she didn't know it would happen this fast. His fall from grace was such a complete crash because he was able to get away with such despicable things for so long, she said. He made his living off being a bigot and a terrible person. Someone like him does whatever it takes to stay on top. This description of him, again if accurate, demonstrates an individual that operates through expedience, the need to assert control, using other people to achieve that, evidencing a lack of emotional empathy, being bigoted and unpleasant to achieve those aims of control, character traits, fuel, and residual benefits. Those are known as the prime aims in the world of the narcissist. Just 6 months ago, the article continued, the launch of Dawson and Star's conspiracy palette crashed the Morph and Beauty Bay platforms because so many people were trying to buy it at once. The YouTube superstars were doing meet and greets with thousands of screaming fans at Morph stores, and the whole venture was allegedly going to earn Dawson $10 million. Looking back, it's a far cry from what's happening now, with companies and fellow influencers distancing themselves from Dawson as he becomes the main focus of nearly every drama video on YouTube. Of course, all of the videos that are being made about him, including this one, will provide him with fuel. However, it is challenge fuel, because the commentary of these drama videos will be critical of him, describing his behaviours as wrong, incorrect, and therefore that will threaten his sense of control. And so whilst he gains fuel from all of the outpouring of disapproval, criticism, etc., this will still threaten his control and be problematic to him, meaning that he would need to provide some kind of response in order to nullify that threat to his control. The Insider article continues, Dawson's problematic history has haunted him for years. This is by no means the first time Dawson's history has come back to haunt him. He's been on YouTube as a social media celebrity for over a decade and started his online career during the peak of edgy comedy. In several apology videos scattered throughout his career, note several apology videos evidencing the fact that the promised change never occurs, the compartmentalization, the lack of emotional empathy, and the repetitive and habitual behaviours, Dawson has apologised for his past and said he no longer recognises the person in the old footage that periodically resurfaces. It appears, however, as insider comments, that this time an apology hasn't cut it. The difference is that now Dawson is something of a mainstream celebrity. While in 2012 he and other online creators like Jenna Marbles were christened as rising stars you've never heard of in Variety magazine, Gen Z and certain breeds of very online millennials have made them into household names in the years since. YouTube culture has steadily trickled through the wall between online and mainstream entertainment over the last decade, but it was Karmageddon 2 and the fallout between Westbrook and Charles that bulldozed its way through. Even those asking, who are these people, which included me, found themselves desperate to read about the latest instalment, which didn't include me, in the saga of who was going to win the beauty guru war. However, given the explanation of this demonstrates the popularity of these individuals, and moreover, note this, that having become wealthy, very famous individuals, there is no accountability exhibited for this status that has been attained. There is the continuance of the behaviours which show a sense of entitlement, a lack of accountability, and a lack of emotional empathy. There is no consideration given to, I'm a role model, I'm famous, I need to think about the things that I produce and do so in a particular manner. Of course, that doesn't happen because the narcissism doesn't allow it. The combination, insider writes, of Dawson's newfound notoriety, his badly timed letter to the beauty community, and manipulative label was finally what tipped Dawson's career and reputation over the edge. This time the cancelling seems to have stuck, and he doesn't know what to do about it. Right now he's scrambling because he's never been held accountable, said Gaskin. Indeed, and he has no sense of accountability, and the breadth and depth of these various threats to his control may well cause him to scramble. And there is evidence of that response, something I shall come to presently. His karma for not taking an ounce of accountability is coming at him fast. For whatever reason, people are now just becoming upset about his past actions when they've been there all along, and now they want answers. Whilst karma doesn't exist, the fact is that the behaviour that his narcissism caused him to engage in at the outset is now resulting in collateral consequences. Dawson's continued partnership with Star, insider writes, who is also periodically called out for his own controversies, also didn't help his case. I think Shane was always playing with fire, befriending maybe the most controversial figure on YouTube and aligning so much of his brand with him. CEO of Studio BE Brandon Relf told Insider. It's ironically what probably made the duo so successful. The devil and the angel combo always works in storytelling. Of course, the supposed angel comes across as a false one, a manufactured appearance of being the do-gooder, whereas so much of the behaviour suggests the contrary. Moreover, aligning with a controversial figure as Star also evidences a sense of entitlement, a lack of awareness, a lack of emotional empathy, and a lack of accountability. Ralph continued, stating that Dawson had now been exposed as not quite the angel he seemed. Indeed, that is often the case with certain types of narcissist. Ralph stated, I'm a strong believer in forgiving people for their past, and this hasn't been Shane's first apology about any of this, he said, but I think the timing and where the world is at has really started to harm his halo. Insider writes, Dawson's pursuit of being a good guy on YouTube may be why his crash has been so terminal. Chris Boutte of the channel The Rewired Soul told Insider influencers can sometimes fall victim to their own personas. No, what actually happens is they fall victim to their narcissism as a consequence of the collateral consequence. Insider continues, stating, Star, on the other hand, may be uncancelable for this very reason, that his fan base is so desensitized to his problematic behaviour and supervillain persona that they accept it, even though he's been through more controversies than I've had hot dinners, said Ralph. The expectation fans have of Dawson is very different, said Boutte, so his mistakes feel more significant. This is one of the difficulties that exists for a narcissist where there is the projection of a particular facade. The individual star evidently engages in behaviour which is paying up to this idea of a supervillain persona, and what you see is what you get, not pretending to be anything other than what he is. However, because Dawson has tried to maintain a facade of being the good guy, that he's not a racist, that he is not an offensive person, yet his actions and behaviours suggest the contrary, means that ultimately the facade runs the risk of cracking under sustained pressure, as is what is now happening. The article notes that compared to Dawson's million, Star has lost 400,000 subscribers in the last 2 weeks, a relatively small number for an exposed past littered with racial slurs, violence and backstabbing behaviour. When you have somebody like Jeffree Star, Trisha Paytas or Tana Mongeau, what do you really expect from them, Boutte posed. Do you expect them to be this kind, generous, giving person, or do you expect them to be a kind of a-hole and constantly be in controversy? You kind of look at it like, oh, well, I expect that from them, but I don't expect it from Shane. Insider states, Dawson's halo shone so brightly for so long for his 22 million fans, it was inevitable he would eventually end up falling short of their expectations and disappointing them. Not necessarily. Just because somebody shone so brightly doesn't mean that they're doomed for failure. Indeed, an empathic person would not suffer that fate. However, an individual who portrays one thing whilst acting in a different way is ultimately going to become hoisted by their own petard at some future juncture. That is the fate of many narcissists as a consequence of their narcissism's inability to look long term. Some narcissism does that. It thinks ahead for them. They make the most appropriate response to ensure the preservation of a particular facade and achieving a particular outcome. But that is rare. Most narcissists act in the moment with no thought to the collateral consequences, something that is occurring here with Dawson. Ralph said Dawson reacting to Westbrook's video in real time on Instagram Live, where he called her a liar and a manipulator, was a huge mistake. It will have done him no favours in clearing the fog of controversies he's found himself in over the last 2 weeks. Shane doesn't seem to be very good at damage control, he said, and that will cause huge problems for him. He might be damaging his brand more now than Tate or anyone else could. The video in question shows Dawson playing the video from Westbrook in the background as he films on Instagram. In a 45-second clip, Dawson is clearly troubled and shaken by the video. He repeatedly says, oh my God, labels Westbrook as manipulative. He claims, you are fake crying, that isn't real, oh my God, and at times is left speechless. This demonstrates a response to his unconscious need for control and his unconscious attempt to assert control by recording his reaction to place in the public domain. Rather than listen, reflect and keep his reaction private, the narcissism causes the need to address this threat to his control, causing him to be compelled to record his reaction live for everybody to see. Westbrook's video challenges him. She issues challenge fuel, threatening his control, and the unconscious narcissism compels him to not only need to reject it, but as a consequence of the grandiosity and short-sightedness, to then film a video showing him reacting to it, which then, as Delph has identified, results in further problems. Dawson, of course, has his supporters, including those who have spoken about him being a generous, kind and caring person. And doubtless those supporters are genuine in their observations based upon their own experiences with him. And they will have witnessed what they believe are acts of kindness, support and caring. They won't have made it up. But it's important to understand very carefully that somebody who repeatedly and habitually exhibits the behaviours described in this video from a variety of differing sources isn't someone who's actually genuine with regard to those supposed acts of caring and kindness. They are manipulations in themselves and part of facade management. People think that an individual who can be jolly decent, very fair, very kind, but then repeatedly fouls up is something of a troubled soul. Quite simply, somebody who comes along and is kind and caring and loving, but then engages in abusive, offensive behaviour, and there is a pattern of it, isn't a genuinely decent person. There is not a situation of them being part-time, but rather the kind and loving and gentle and fair behaviour are all just manipulations in themselves, part of a facade, done to draw people in, and then the dark side of the behaviours is exhibited. Quite simply, it is this. An individual who may have treated you wonderfully in the beginning, but then beats you up, calls you names, slurs you, gives you word salads, circular conversations, cheats on you, triangulates you with other people, and in effect abuses you, is not somebody who operates with emotional empathy. And because they do not, that can only mean that the behaviour that was exhibited at the outset, the being loving, the kindness, the generous, the support, all of that was purely a manipulation and false. People with emotional empathy remain consistent in their behaviours. Yes, they will have very occasional slip-ups because they're human beings that are subjected to external stresses which reduce their emotional empathy. But an individual who arrives and is wonderful and decent to you, only then to engage in habitual and repeated dark and unpleasant and offensive and abusive behaviours, is not a person who operates with emotional empathy. Accordingly, it is important to make this point that just because somebody can be decent alongside being abusive doesn't mean that they're not a narcissist. The detailed evidence obtained from a range of different sources in this video supports that Shane Dawson has repeatedly and habitually engaged in exhibiting the following: a sense of entitlement, a lack of emotional empathy, manipulative behaviours, grandiosity, haughtiness, false contrition, lack of accountability, poor boundary recognition, insult, belittlement, arrogance, false compassion, self-absorption, the need to assert control, exhibiting a response to a perceived threat to this control, facade management, blame shifting, projection, compartmentalization, repetition of abusive behaviours, lack of awareness, promised change, failure to change, dismissiveness, and triangulation. And as such, this repeated pattern of behaviours supported by this evidence leads to the conclusion that he is indeed a very apologetic narcissist. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.